What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are working on sanding the entire engine bay. We're actually about 3 or 4 days into sanding, so we're kind of catching you guys up a little bit later. So far we made really good progress. We've actually done a lot more sanding and extra work that I did not think that we were going to have to do, but we're doing it and may as well do it while the motor's out. This is where we're at right now. We have almost everything sanded. I need to work on some stuff down here and over there. Another thing we decided to do is go ahead and remove all of the seam sealer. Once again, since the motor's out and we're probably never gonna have to do this again, you may as well do it. So we have, I would say, probably 95% of all the seam sealer gone. All of the top up here, you can see there's nothing in between the gap. And actually I can show you on Jeff's car over here what it looked like before, since he still has his. You can see all of this like kind of raised up glue right there. So we went ahead and took off all of that for mine. So we are looking all cleaned up in the engine bay. So we're almost done with sanding. I really want to take my time with it so that once we lay down the paint or primer, everything's going to be set to go. It's going to turn out as best as possible. Also, I'm also removing I already did remove, but there used to be a bracket right here with kind of a hole for the mount, which used to hold the windshield washer reservoir, as well as this tab up here that I cut off. So what I'm going to do is go back, instead of drilling out the welds. So we're going to sand down all the metal until it's flush, and then we can paint over that instead of having to drill, and then we have more holes. So like for instance, we need to sand down this. I still got to cut this one. This one was for the fuse box that goes right over here. So I'm going to cut that, sand it down. So we're actually doing a lot more shaving and cutting than I thought. We can eventually cut the battery mount down here as well, get that sanded down, and then paint over that. Right now it looks like kind of a mess because there's crap all over the ground. It's gonna look worse before it gets better, obviously, and we still have some cleaning up to do. And I think I want to try and get this ready for paint. I still have to paint around the outside. On the front, I have the front painted. I want to do the sides too. I want to get ready for paint here in the next week or so. I'm not painting it myself. I'm going to see if Jeff can help me out with painting. He's the one that did all of my fender flares, and he does a really good job, paints all the headlights at work. So I was like, if you want to help me paint, that'd be perfect, because I know I'm not going to do the base coat and the clear coat. I could probably do primer, but that's about it. But we're actually going to get a compressor, gun, the whole setup, rather than like a rattle can, because I'd rather do it the right way, as much as you can do it the right way, and not a real paint booth, before going to the rattle can idea. So it's coming along. I've been at it for a couple days now, like I said. I don't know if I've shown this yet. I have my motor ripped apart. The intake manifold is off because we will need to swap over the throttle body from mine to the new motor. I guess they're both kind of mine now, but the old motor to the new motor, because the new one on the STI is drive-by-wire, and mine is the 2.0 is drive-by-cable, which actually drive-by-cable is better. So we'll have better throttle response over the electronic one. But doing a little bit of swapping. Another thing, stopped by a buddy's shop last week and got a bunch of good information on the swap as far as wiring and stuff. I also will need to take my wiring harness, which is right down there, and I want to clean it up first before we put it on the new motor, but we can get it attached to the new motor, and we'll kind of go through another video about how to swap everything over as far as wiring and stuff like that. Another thing that we ran into is this intake manifold has no bypass valve on the top where the throttle body sits against it, as the 2.0 does. And one thing I did talk to a couple buddies last week is, do we have to cut a hole for it on this one instead of reusing my 2.0 manifold, which would be the simplest way? Just take it off, put the 2.0 one on here. But if you can see, this 2.5 one is actually powder coated. I really like the color of this manifold because it's actually going to go well with the engine bay. Engine bay is not going to be that exact color. It's going to match it pretty well, I think. And also this one has already been shaved of some of the goodies that we're not going to need anymore, so it looks a little bit cleaner, so I don't have to go through and shave mine, refinish it, and then have it powder coated as well, saving a little bit of time and money on this. Another thing I want to do before it goes back in is I actually want to take off some bits and pieces up front here and paint those as well. Probably just going to do a gloss black with those. So
I want to take my time before this actually goes in there to make sure I have everything correct that I want to be done to it before I drop it in and have to mess around with it in there and potentially like scratch the paint and stuff over there. Just a side note, I actually have to sand these as well before they go back on the car. They are the mounts for the strut brace because I do not have any more pink stuff on the car to match, so that needs to go to a different color so it can actually match the engine bay. I might do gloss black for those so it kind of contrasts against the engine bay, but we'll see. I did drop the coilovers from the top here so I can actually put some masking over the hole once we get ready for paint, so I didn't have the studs sticking through, and kind of have them resting on jack stands so that it's not dragging the control arm down as well as the axle, so it's not putting so much pressure on the axle with them being flexed down. So I actually got 2 more jack stands and put them right there, and they fit pretty well and saves it from the axles being kind of pulled on.
So like I said, I have most of the seam sealer gone. There's a couple more spots kind of towards the transmission tunnel that I want to get to. I also need to keep in mind that when we do go to paint the bay, I will have to take off a lot of the components behind the bell housing in order so we can get the paint back there. But as far as like the wiring, such as right here, I'm gonna have to mask that off and kind of get it as close to kind of squished together as possible, so then I can go and paint around there and not have an issue. Yeah, that's pretty much it, just sanding and more sanding.
So the next piece that I need to work on is cutting off the battery mount, so I'm going to go ahead and start cutting that off. There we go. Nice. So took out the battery mount underneath. The bottom portion of it is spot welded, so I'm gonna wait to get that floppy disk sander thing to sand that down to make it flush. Same thing with what I was talking about earlier about with sanding this down. And then also the reservoir that was sitting right there, that bracket needs to be shaved down. Still need to do the pour 15 on the bottom end. Haven't got around to that yet just because I've been kind of caught up with sanding and getting all this stuff done.
As soon as all of the paint stuff is done, at least the sanding and getting everything prepped and ready to get the paint laid, that's where I'm going to start doing the engine stuff with the engine teardown. I also have, this motor is torn down to pretty much everything I'm going to need off of it. That one is not. So I think I want to do a video by itself of an engine teardown. Not the entire thing, but just what we're going to need to do in order to get my wiring harness onto that. We are going to have to take off, I believe, the intake manifold as well on there, just to run some new lines underneath it, all the wiring harness. Speaking of wiring harness, I also want to clean up and get rid of a lot of this crappy wrap that's around it, as well as clean up all the connectors because they do have grease on them. And then I'm going to have to figure out what else I need to transfer over to the new motor. One thing that is going to have to change is the cam angle sensor bracket, which I need to get. Cosworth makes one and it just hooks right up into the 2.5 and it works. Like I said, I also want to get everything painted on the front, probably just a nice gloss black, just to finish it up while it's out of the car. Just taking those extra steps. It's freezing here, you can see my breath. Just to get everything looking as good as it possibly can before everything goes back together. Like I said, this car is pretty much my learning car on how to do everything, so I kind of want to try new things, or as much as I can in this one, so that when we build the next car and the next car, it'll go much smoother and we know how to perfect it and get done even faster.
Speaking of the old block, I actually sold the turbo, the stock TD04, the other day, so that is gone. I also have the radiator.
I also have the radiator for sale, stock intake. I have a bunch of parts. Everything that I've taken off the car except for the turbo is now sold, but pretty much once I'm done with taking apart the block, I will have the block here as well, and everything else on top of it, the power steering pump, the alternator, and the AC compressor. So if you guys are interested, it's going to be kind of a torn down block, so I'm going to be trying to get rid of it for super cheap. I'll have the block for sale, hopefully. I'm not sure how much more I'm going to have to take off this, but I guess I'll post like an actual post about the motor being for sale once I'm 100% sure that I have everything on my motor that needs to be on there with the conversion. Also, we're trying to get Jeff's car out of here this week so that I can continue painting on mine, because I don't want to get black overspray on a white car, which would show everything. So hopefully getting that out this week so I can get back to work on painting that, which is why I have not painted that brace over there as well as the other side. I think I'm gonna call it a night. I got some decent amount of work done tonight got the battery tray out. Need to go ahead and pick up a disc that can sand down those metal tabs that are still kind of left over, and then kind of just finish up a little bit more sanding. I also need to clean up the subframe before the motor goes back in, because it does have a decent amount of grease all over it, which actually kind of helped keep everything rust free on the bottom, with this being a northern, well, half of its life northern Subaru. A lot of places in the back of the subframe, and the actual subframe itself is in good condition. Just need to clean it up and get all that grease out of there, as well as clean up the inside of the transmission while I'm at it, and possibly around the housing and everything. But hopefully in the next video we will be pretty much done with sanding, as well as we need to jump into getting the new motor ripped apart, as far as the intake manifold and stuff like we talked about earlier, and get that thing going. But thank you guys for watching this video. Super stoked on everyone being excited for the new motor as well as the new setup going in. So we're trying to work as hard as we can to get this thing looking as good as we can. Actually, this is our first time ever doing this much work to the engine bay. We've already swapped Ryan's motor before, so you guys have seen us do that back in the past. It was like 2 years ago now. But this is the biggest project that we've done to the date. So we'll see what comes of this and what we can do after this. But we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out. See ya.